The hall was built to impress, not to feel warm. Smooth metal walls curved upward like a silent sky, reflecting soft light that shifted color with every sound. Long rows of seats faced a raised platform where the alien royal family sat in calm stillness. Humans had been invited for the first time in many years, and every step inside the hall felt heavy with meaning. Most of the humans were officials, diplomats, and observers. A few were guards placed there more for tradition than trust. Among them was one human who did not belong to the world of speeches or power. He stood near the side wall, wearing a simple uniform, hands relaxed but eyes alert. He was assigned as temporary support staff, someone meant to watch, listen, and stay out of the way. He had no important title, no history of fame. He had taken the job because it paid enough, and because he believed peace mattered, even if his role was small. He did not expect anything memorable to happen that day. The alien princess sat beside the queen, her posture calm, her gaze curious. She was younger than most expected, with eyes that seemed to study everything at once. She had insisted on attending, despite concerns about safety. To her, learning about humans directly mattered more than comfort. The talks began slowly. Translations moved back and forth in measured tones. Old disagreements were mentioned, but softened with careful words. Every sound echoed gently through the chamber. It felt controlled, safe. Then something shifted. The human near the wall noticed it first, though he could not explain how. Maybe it was the way a sound cut too sharply through the room. Maybe it was instinct. His eyes moved toward the upper balcony where support structures crossed like ribs. For a brief second, nothing seemed wrong. Then there was a flash. It was small, fast, and wrong. A sharp object dropped from above, moving too quickly for thought. The guards froze for half a second, caught between disbelief and training. The alien princess turned her head, sensing movement but not danger. The human did not think. His body moved before his mind caught up. He ran forward, crossing open space in long strides. People shouted, but the sounds blurred together. He reached the platform just as the object burst. Sending a wave of force outward, he threw himself in front of the princess. The impact was loud and close. Heat, pressure, and pain hit him all at once. His back slammed into the floor, and the air rushed out of his lungs. For a moment, everything went white. When sound returned, it came in pieces. Alarms, voices, a high ringing in his ears. He tried to move and felt fire spread through his side. His vision swam, but he could make out shapes above him. The princess was alive. She was on her knees, staring at him, eyes wide in shock. The queen stood frozen, her expression no longer calm, but sharp with something deeper. Guards rushed in from all sides. Some aimed weapons upward. Others formed a wall around the royal family. Medical staff followed, moving faster than protocol allowed. The human tried to speak, but his throat burned. He managed a breath and a weak sound, more a release than a word. His eyes stayed on the princess. Checking again that she was unharmed, she reached out without thinking, her hand hovering near his shoulder before stopping, unsure if touching him would cause more harm. Her breathing was uneven. The queen gave a short command. The room went quiet except for alarms that slowly faded. The attacker was already gone, leaving behind confusion and fear. Medical hands lifted the human carefully. Pain tore through him, but he clenched his jaw and stayed silent. He did not want to make it worse. He did not want attention. He only wanted the moment to end. As they carried him away, the princess stood and watched. Her gaze followed him until the doors closed. In the medical wing, light was softer. The air smelled clean and sharp. The human drifted in and out of awareness as scans passed over his body. Voices spoke in calm tones, though he caught words like critical and unusual. He woke fully hours later. The first thing he noticed was the ceiling, curved and glowing faintly. The second was the weight in his chest. Breathing hurt, but it was possible. He turned his head slightly and saw a figure standing near the far wall. It was the queen. She did not approach. She stood with hands folded, her presence filling the room without movement. Her eyes studied him with a focus that made him uneasy. "You acted without order," the translator spoke for her. He swallowed. "Yes. Why?" He frowned slightly as if the question confused him. She was in danger. "That is not an answer," the Queen said. He thought for a moment, then spoke slowly. "It is the only one I have." The Queen said nothing for a long time. Machines hummed softly around them. Finally, she turned and left without another word. The human lay back, staring upward. Only then did the weight of what happened begin to settle. He felt fear, delayed and heavy. His hands trembled slightly. He had almost died. The thought came with no drama, just fact. Later, a human official visited, face pale. He spoke of investigations, of questions, of how close everything had come to disaster. He thanked the human in rushed words, promised recognition, maybe even promotion. The human listened quietly. None of it mattered to him. He only nodded and asked one thing. "Is she okay?" The official hesitated, then smiled weakly. Yes, she wasn't harmed. Relief washed over him, stronger than the pain. Days passed. News of the attack spread through both worlds, though details were kept controlled. Footage leaked anyway. The moment of impact played again and again across screens. Commentators argued about motives and consequences, but among the alien people, the discussion was different. They spoke of the human who placed himself between death and royal blood. They spoke of instinct, of sacrifice, of something unfamiliar, yet powerful. Some questioned it. Others felt unsettled by it. The princess came to visit on the third day. She stood just inside the doorway at first, uncertain. The human noticed her and tried to sit up, then winced and stopped. She moved closer, slow and careful. "You should not move," she said through the translator. "Sorry," he replied. "Habit." She studied him for a moment, then sat in the chair beside the bed. Silence stretched between them. "Why did you do it?" she asked, her voice quieter now. He looked at her, then away. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I didn't plan it." "That makes it more confusing," she said. He gave a small, tired smile. "It confused me too." She watched him closely, as if trying to understand something beyond words. "In my world," she said, "lives are protected by rank and duty. What you did does not fit our rules." He shrugged slightly, careful of his injuries. "In mine, sometimes you just act." She nodded slowly, absorbing that. "You could have died, I know. And you expect nothing?" He looked at her again, surprised by the question. "I expect to heal, and then go home." Her eyes widened just a little. She stood, clearly unsettled. "That may not be possible," she said softly, more to herself than to him. Before he could ask what she meant, she left. The door closed. Leaving the room quiet once more, the human stared at the ceiling again, unaware that his life had already crossed a line it could not return from. What he thought was a single moment of instinct had become something far larger. Outside the medical wing, the Queen stood with her advisors. Her expression was unreadable. "He did not ask for reward," one advisor said. "That is rare." "Rare things carry weight," the Queen replied. Her gaze lingered on the closed door. "Prepare the records," she said. "This act will not be forgotten. I'm somewhere between two worlds." A simple human decision began to reshape a future no one had planned. The hospital wing was quiet, almost unnaturally so. The human lay on a soft bed, wrapped in bandages and blankets, feeling the soreness of every muscle, the burn of every bruise, and the slow, steady throb of pain where he had taken the brunt of the attack. The machines around him hummed and blinked, reading his vital signs with precise care, but they could not measure what was already happening beyond the walls. His life had become a matter of great interest to a world far older and wiser than his own. The human thought about the day again and again, replaying the moment when instinct had taken over. He remembered the flash, the heat, the force, and most of all, the sudden clarity of purpose. It had been so simple. She needed protection, and he was there. Yet now he understood that what had seemed like a simple human reaction had ripples far larger than he could have imagined. Outside the room, the royal court moved quickly. Though humans were present as observers, the alien world ran on a deeper current of rules, traditions, and codes of honor. To them, life was precious. Yes, but it was measured differently. Saving a royal was not just a matter of survival, it was an act that could change alliances, reputations, and the very structure of their society. News of the human sacrifice had spread quickly through whispers, gestures, and formal reports. Every official, every counselor, and even members of the royal guard debated what it meant. "This is unusual," one counselor said quietly to another, their voices barely above the hum of the palace. "He acted without rank, without authority. He intervened without orders, and yet he succeeded." Another shook their head. "In our history, someone who acts so boldly without protocol usually expects gain. But this human, he asked for nothing." Their discussion was tense because humans were unpredictable. They were fascinating to the court, but that fascination came with caution. Humans had a history of behaving in ways that aliens could not fully understand. And this one human, in one perfect moment, had changed how the aliens now saw courage. Meanwhile, the human was adjusting to life under alien care. The bandages were thick, designed to help him heal faster, but they were also uncomfortable. Every shift of the bed reminded him of the weight he had borne, the impact he had absorbed. Despite that, he remained calm. He had a quiet, stubborn way of handling pain that both frustrated and impressed the alien medical staff. They watched him carefully, noticing his patience and the way he did not complain, not understanding fully that this was human instinct at work, a mixture of endurance, humility, and stubbornness. On the fourth day, the princess returned. She came alone, without guards, a sign of trust or curiosity, he could not tell which. Her eyes were sharper now, examining him not just as a patient, but as someone who had crossed the boundary of life and duty. "You are healing," she said simply. Her voice was still filtered through the translator, but the tone carried emotion, almost like relief. He tried to sit up and smiled weakly. "Yes," slowly. She studied him carefully, her gaze moving from his bandages to his face and then to his eyes. "You do not seem afraid of what happened." He shook his head. "Fear comes later. First, there is just the moment. I only acted." Her eyebrows rose slightly. "You acted, without thinking of the consequences." "That's right," he exhaled slowly. "Consequences only come after." The princess leaned back, her expression thoughtful. Humans were different. Their courage was simple and instinctive, not measured by rank, titles, or law. She had grown up in a world where every act was weighed, measured, and approved. To see someone act purely, without calculation, unsettled her. Later that day, the human was visited by a senior alien official, someone who carried authority in every measured movement. The official did not smile. He did not offer comfort. He only observed, speaking in precise terms. "You know, do you, that what you did has meaning far beyond your understanding?" "I suppose," the human said slowly. "I just wanted to keep her safe." The official's eyes narrowed. "In our world, acts of protection are recorded. They are remembered. They create bonds that cannot be broken lightly." The human blinked. "Bonds, you mean?" "Like a promise." "Yes," the official said, "but stronger. In some ways, it is a debt written in blood. You've saved her life, and that changes your place in our society, whether you like it or not." He swallowed, not fully sure what to say. In his world, he had not expected obligations to travel across planets. He only knew he had done what anyone might have done in that moment. Yet here on this alien world, the meaning of his action was far larger, more permanent, and impossible to escape. Meanwhile, the princess began to speak to him more openly. Each visit brought new insights into alien life, their customs, and the weight of the royal family's responsibilities. She did not fully trust him yet, and yet she could not ignore that his presence was already changing her perspective. Most of our kind would have run, she said during one quiet moment. They would have calculated risk, duty, survival. You did not. He looked at her simply. I didn't think about that. I only knew what needed to happen. Her eyes softened. That is both remarkable and dangerous. In our world, danger follows recklessness. Yet you survived. He shrugged, wincing as a muscle protested. Luck helps sometimes. The days passed slowly, filled with healing, observation, and conversation. The human learned more about the alien culture than any diplomat could in years. He heard stories of wars long ended, treaties long forgotten, and the complexity of a society that measured honor differently from his own. At the same time, the alien princess learned about the human world, its simplicity, its chaos, and its strange strength. Through it all, the queen watched from a distance. She said little, letting others report the progress. Yet every word spoken about the human, every story of his actions, came to her ears. She did not fully understand humans, but she understood instinct and courage. And she understood what it meant for one of her own to be saved by a being who expected nothing in return. One evening, after the day's visitors had gone, the human lay awake in the quiet room. The soft hum of the machines was comforting now, almost like a lullaby. He thought about the attack, about the moment he had shielded the princess, and about what it had cost him. Pain and exhaustion were real, but the weight on his mind was heavier. He wondered what would happen next. Would he be sent home? Would life return to normal? Or had his choice in that one moment created a new life, one he could not yet see? The princess appeared in the doorway once more, holding a small tray of food. She did not speak at first, only watching him. You are quiet, she said softly. I have a lot to think about, he replied. Not just about me, but about everything. She nodded slowly. You do not belong here. And yet, you are part of this now. That is not a small thing. He looked at her, trying to understand. I only acted. I didn't plan this. That is why it matters, she said. You showed a truth that our laws and traditions cannot always teach. You acted from the heart, not from obligation. Her words settled around him like a warmth he had not expected. For the first time since the attack, he felt not pain, not fear, but a quiet awareness that he had crossed a line into a world much larger than his own. He ate the food slowly, speaking only a little, while the princess stayed nearby. Their silence was not awkward. It was a quiet acknowledgement of shared understanding. Each of them knew that what had happened could not be undone, and that the human's life was already tied to something greater. Outside the room, Queen's advisors continued their debate. The human is remarkable, one said. We must decide what this means for the royal family. Another shook their head. It is not only about survival. His act carries honor, influence, and expectation. We cannot ignore it. The queen herself remained still, listening to every word, every opinion, every interpretation. She was considering far more than the moment of the attack. She was considering the ripple effect of courage, loyalty, and instinct across worlds. Back in the medical wing, the human closed his eyes and allowed himself a moment of rest. He had survived the impossible, and yet he felt the invisible threads of consequence already winding around him. He had acted to protect life, as any human might, but the act itself was no longer simple. It had become part of something far larger as he drifted into sleep. He did not know the full weight of the bonds his actions had created. He did not know that across the palace, whispers of his courage were growing into discussions of honor, trust, and obligation. He did not know that the queen was already thinking of how this human might change the course of events in ways he could never imagine. But the human knew one thing for certain. He had acted from instinct, and he had saved a life. And that was enough for now, to face whatever came next. The first threads of a story far larger than any human or alien could predict had begun to weave themselves. And it all started with one simple choice, one moment of instinct, and one life placed in the path of danger to protect another. The day ended quietly, the machines humming and the lights dimming. The human lay awake for a while, thinking of Earth, of home, and of the strange new world he had entered. Outside his window, the alien city stretched endlessly, lights shifting like stars. He understood, in a small but deep way, that he was no longer just a visitor. He was now part of a story he could not yet read, but that would shape both worlds forever. The human's recovery continued slowly. Every day brought small improvements, though each step was accompanied by aches and stiffness. The alien doctors were precise, skilled, and thorough. They moved like shadows, silent and efficient, attending to his wounds, checking his vitals, and observing his reactions with a careful curiosity. The human was aware of every glance, every murmur, but he did not mind. He was learning slowly to trust a world so different from his own. The princess visited often. She no longer came only out of concern, but out of genuine interest in the human who had risked his life for her. At first, she had been cautious, unsure of what he wanted, how he thought, and whether he might be dangerous simply by misunderstanding the rules of her people. Now, she came willingly, asking questions, listening, and sharing small pieces of her own world. "You do not understand the importance of what you did," she said one afternoon as he rested in his bed, propped up on soft pillows. The soft glow of the room made her features gentle, almost fragile, but her eyes were sharp, focused. "And unyielding, I acted," he replied simply. "I didn't think about importance. I thought about what needed to happen. That is what makes it remarkable," she said. "In our world, almost everything is measured. Every action is calculated, weighed, and approved. You did not calculate. You just acted. And that scares some of my people." He frowned slightly. "Scares them?" "Yes," she said. "Because it is unpredictable. Because it is human in a way that our rules do not allow. You acted from instinct, and instinct is powerful. It cannot be controlled or ignored." The human looked down at his hands. They were bandaged, bruised, scarred, yet still steady. "I didn't know it would matter so much," he said quietly. "I just moved." The princess studied him for a long moment. "Perhaps that is the way of your world. Perhaps that is what makes humans different. You do not wait. You do not measure. You act. And the results are sometimes miraculous." Her words were soft, almost hesitant. The human felt the weight of them, though he did not fully understand why. It was clear that his actions had already begun to change the way the alien princess viewed life, duty, and courage. Outside his room, the palace buzzed with movement and discussion. The news of his bravery had reached far corners of the royal court. Advisors debated quietly, whispering about how a human could step into danger without calculation or fear. Scholars speculated about the instinctive nature of humans, wondering if they could ever be trusted. Yet recognizing the power of a being who could act without hesitation, one advisor spoke aloud. "Though in private council he saved a princess without knowing the consequences, that alone changes the balance. His courage must be acknowledged. His presence must be considered." Others shook their head. "It is not just courage. It is something deeper. He demonstrated loyalty, fearlessness, and a willingness to place another above himself. That is not common, even among our own." The queen listened silently. Her face gave away nothing, but her mind worked swiftly. In her world, saving a life created a debt, a bond, a connection that could not be broken lightly. And this human had created that bond without knowing it. That bond now belonged to her family, and to the alien society that watched every move carefully. Meanwhile, the human began to regain strength. Every day he could move a little more. He walked slowly down the long corridors of the medical wing, leaning lightly on a staff provided by the aliens. The halls were quiet, echoing with soft mechanical sounds and distant conversations. The human noticed everything: the way the light shifted, the faint hum of distant machines, the subtle changes in temperature. The princess walked with him during these sessions, though she rarely spoke much. Her presence was steady, reassuring, yet filled with unspoken questions. Sometimes she would glance at him and smile faintly. Other times, she would look away, lost in thought. "You have changed," she said one day as they paused to watch the alien gardens below the windows. The gardens were unlike anything he had ever seen, filled with plants that glowed softly and flowers that shimmered in the light. Not in body, though, that is healing, but in presence. You are different than other humans. You carry something. Unexpected. He looked at her, unsure how to respond. I'm not sure I understand. You acted when most would hesitate, she said. That is what makes you different. That is what makes you remarkable. He shook his head slightly. I don't feel remarkable. I feel tired and sore, and I keep wondering if I should have done something else. She smiled faintly, almost sadly. You cannot think that way. What you did was right. That is all that matters. The rest will follow. The human thought about that as they walked slowly through the halls. He realized he was beginning to understand something important. Courage was not measured by the strength of one's body, nor by the titles one held. It was measured by the willingness to act when everything seemed uncertain, to protect what mattered without expecting reward or recognition. That, he realized, was the difference between him and many others in the room, both human and alien. The princess brought him to the library one afternoon. It was vast, filled with scrolls, devices, and records that stretched far beyond what he could imagine. She had come to explain the traditions of her world, the meaning of honor, and the weight of royal blood. You must understand, she said, pulling a seat beside him, that what you did is not just an act of bravery. It carries weight in ways that you cannot yet see. In our culture, saving a life is a bond that cannot be broken easily. You have created that bond without realizing it. He nodded slowly. So what happens now? That is not up to you, she said softly. It is up to the court. It is up to the queen. Your presence now matters more than you think. You are not just a human who visited this world. You are someone who changed it simply by acting as yourself. The human leaned back, staring at the ceiling. It was overwhelming, yet strangely comforting. He had acted from instinct, without thought of consequence. And now that instinct had changed the lives of many. Over the next days, the princess continued to teach him, to explain the rules, the history, and the unspoken ways of her people. He listened, absorbed, and learned. He began to understand that the attack on her had been more than random. It had been planned, meant to send a message, to destabilize relationships, to test loyalty. And in stepping forward, it not only saved her life, but it disrupted plans that could have had wide consequences. Your world and ours are different, she said one evening, but your courage, your willingness to act, has shown us something new. We must consider what that means, not just for you, but for everyone. The human felt a strange mix of pride and confusion. He had acted simply to protect a life, yet now he was part of something much larger, something he could not yet fully understand. The queen observed from her chambers, silent and careful. She had not visited directly, but she received reports. Every word, every gesture, every detail of the human's behavior was recorded and analyzed. His humility, his patience, his lack of desire for reward, all of it made him unusual, remarkable, and invaluable. One advisor spoke quietly to the queen. He does not belong here. He is human, yet he is unlike any human we have ever known. He has saved a princess, acted without expectation, and yet he carries no pride. How do we manage that? The queen considered the words carefully. We do not manage it, she said finally. We respect it, and we remember it. That is enough for now. Back in the medical wing, the human began to take small walks through the palace gardens, guided by the princess. The air was strange but sweet, filled with scents he could not name, and sounds that seemed to echo softly, almost like music. The gardens were designed for reflection, and walking among the glowing plants. He felt a quiet sense of peace. You have changed more than you realize, the princess said quietly as they paused to watch a soft light ripple across the garden. Not in body, not in thought, but in presence, you are noticed, and that cannot be undone. He looked at her, unsure how to respond. I didn't mean to change anything. I only wanted to keep you safe. That is why it matters, she said simply. because you acted from the heart, because you did not think of yourself. That is rare. That is powerful. The human felt the weight of her words. He had acted without thinking, yet the consequences were immense. And he realized something else. He did not regret it. No matter what happened next, no matter the rules, the bonds, or the expectations, he would do the same again. In the following days, the court continued to discuss his actions. They debated what it meant, what obligations he now carried, and how his presence might affect future relations between humans and aliens. Scholars wrote reports. Advisors planned discussions. The queen remained quiet, but listened to every detail, knowing that one day, a decision would be required. For the human, life had shifted. He was no longer just a visitor. He was no longer just a human with a simple job. He had become part of something larger, part of a world he did not fully understand, and part of a story that would continue to unfold in ways he could not yet see. And somewhere deep in the palace, the threads of loyalty, courage, and instinct continued to weave together, connecting human and alien, past and future, in ways that would not be undone. The princess left him alone that evening, but the quiet between them was not emptiness. It was understanding, acknowledgement, a shared sense that the human's actions had begun something that neither world could ignore. He lay in bed that night, staring at the softly glowing ceiling, thinking of home, of life, and of the strange new path that had opened before him. He did not know the full story. He did not know how it would end, but he knew that one simple act, one moment of instinct, one choice to protect another had already changed everything. And in that quiet, he understood the truth. Some actions, even without thought or expectation, can ripple farther than anyone can imagine. He had acted from instinct. He had saved a life. And in doing so, he had become part of something far greater than himself. The human had regained much of his strength. Every day he could move more easily, and the dull, aching pain that had accompanied him since the attack was slowly fading. Yet the quiet hum of the palace and the soft lights of the medical wing reminded him that his life had changed forever. He was no longer an observer in this world. He was no longer someone who simply passed through corridors unnoticed. Every step, every gesture, every glance he made carried weight. He was only beginning to understand. It began with the visit from the princess. As usual, she did not come empty-handed this time. She carried a small device, shaped like a crystal, which glowed faintly in her hands. He watched her enter, noticing the confidence in her stride. She had changed too. She moved with a sense of purpose now, as if his presence had shifted her understanding of duty and courage. "I have been thinking," she said softly, setting the device on the table beside his bed, "about what happened that day, about your actions." He looked at her, unsure how to respond. It was instinct. "I didn't plan anything. He trailed off, shaking his head. "I just reacted." "That is why it matters," she said firmly. "You acted without expectation, without hesitation. That is rare in any world. But here, it is almost unheard of. You have shown courage in a way that is difficult for my people to understand. And because of that, you cannot leave as easily as you might wish." He blinked. "Cannot leave?" "Yes," she said. Her voice was calm but heavy. "The queen has made a decision. You are under her protection now. Your life is bound to the royal family by an unbreakable link. It is not a punishment. It is a recognition of what you have done and what you represent." The human felt a rush of confusion. He had not thought of himself as remarkable. He had not thought of his actions as binding anyone to anything. He had only acted to protect a life. Yet now, he realized, the simple choice to step forward had set in motion forces he could not control. "Protected?" he repeated slowly. "You mean, I'm stuck here?" The princess shook her head. "Not stuck, honored, recognized. Your life is yours, but it is now tied to ours in ways that cannot be undone. The queen has declared that you must remain here, at least for now. Until the implications of your actions can be understood fully, you are safe. But you are also important. More important than you realize." He stared at her, silent for a long moment. He thought of Earth, of home, of the simple life he had known before stepping into this palace. He had never expected to become part of a world so vast, so complex, and so different. And yet, in that moment, he realized he could not undo what had been done. His life had changed, and he would have to accept it. The princess continued, her voice softer now. You saved a life that cannot be replaced. That act carries meaning in our world far beyond the immediate moment. By stepping forward, you created a bond with the royal family that is recognized by law, by tradition, and by honor. Leaving now would be seen as rejecting that bond, and that is not something the queen allows lightly. He nodded slowly, trying to process her words. So, I am part of your world now? Yes, she said simply. Whether you like it or not, your presence matters here. You have shown what it means to act from the heart, and that has consequences. The queen understands the value of that, and she will not let it go unnoticed. Later that day, the human was escorted to a larger room, one with windows that looked out over the city. The alien metropolis stretched endlessly, lights shimmering like stars below a sky he did not recognize. He had never imagined a place like this. The city was alive, vibrant, yet orderly in a way that felt both alien and beautiful. The queen appeared. As she had done only once before, silent and regal, her presence filled the room without movement. She studied him with eyes that seemed to see everything past, present, and perhaps even a glimpse of what was to come. You acted without hesitation, she said finally, her voice calm but firm. You placed yourself in danger to protect one of our own. That is a rare and honorable act. The human swallowed, unsure how to respond. I didn't think about honor. I just reacted. Reactions can carry as much weight as decisions, she replied. Your action has created a bond with this family, with this world. You are now under our protection. You will not be sent away until the consequences of your actions are understood. That is not a punishment. It is recognition. He looked down at his hands, feeling a strange mix of pride and confusion. He had never expected recognition, and yet here it was. Overwhelming and inescapable, the queen continued, her gaze steady. You may have thought your actions were small, that they were only a matter of survival or instinct. But in our world, they carry meaning far beyond what you can imagine. Your life is now tied to ours. That is the reality you must accept. He nodded slowly. I understand, he said quietly. I didn't want to be remarkable. I only wanted to protect her. That is exactly why you are remarkable, she said, because you did not seek reward or recognition. You acted from instinct, from the heart, and that has changed everything. You must now remain here, not as a prisoner, but as someone recognized for their courage. Your life is important to us, and it cannot be ignored. The human felt the weight of her words. He had acted to protect a life, and in doing so, he had created a bond that could not be broken. He had not asked for it, he had not wanted it, but it existed now, undeniable and permanent. Over the following days, the human began to adjust to his new reality. He walked through the palace halls, guided by the princess, learning more about the customs, the rules, and the unspoken expectations of this world. He was no longer simply recovering. He was becoming part of something larger, something he could not yet fully understand. The princess continued to visit, speaking with him about the history of her people, the meaning of honor, and the weight of royal duty. She explained the laws that governed life, the unspoken rules that shaped behavior, and the traditions that had lasted for centuries. He listened, absorbed, and tried to understand. You must understand, said one afternoon, as they walked through the gardens, that what you did is not just an act of bravery. It is a bond that cannot be broken. You are now connected to this family, to this world, in ways that cannot be undone. Leaving now would be seen as rejecting that connection. He nodded slowly, feeling the truth of her words. I didn't expect this, he said quietly. I only acted to protect a life. That is why it matters, she said simply. Because you acted without thinking of reward, without thinking of consequence. You created a bond that is stronger than law or tradition alone. That is why you cannot leave. Not yet. The human realized then that his life had truly changed. He was no longer just a visitor. He was no longer just a human who happened to be in the right place at the right time. He was now part of a story that would shape both worlds, a story that had begun with instinct and courage and would continue through bonds. He had never imagined. The Queen's decree had been clear. The human was not a prisoner, but he was no longer free to leave at will. He was under protection, recognized for his actions, and now part of the royal world. It was a reality he had to accept, no matter how strange or unexpected it seemed. In the quiet moments, he thought of home, of Earth, and of the simple life he had once known. He realized that life would never be simple again. He had stepped into a world larger, more complex, and more beautiful than he could have imagined. And he had done so without planning, without hesitation, and without thought of reward. The human understood that some actions, even those taken in a single moment of instinct, could change the course of life. He had acted to protect another, and in doing so, he had bound himself to a world far greater than his own. And though he did not yet know the full consequences of his actions, he understood one thing clearly. His life had changed forever, and there was no turning back. He had saved a life, and in doing so, had become part of something far larger, something that would not be undone, and something that would shape the future in ways he could not yet imagine. The palace was quiet that evening, the lights soft and steady. The human lay in his room staring at the softly glowing ceiling, thinking of what had happened and what was to come. Outside, the alien city stretched endlessly, alive with motion, light, and purpose. He realized then that he was no longer simply an observer. He was no longer just a human. He was part of their world, and their world was now part of him. The bond had been formed. The Queen's decree was clear. He could not leave, not yet. And so, he waited, not in fear, but in quiet understanding, knowing that the choices he had made had already changed everything, and that his life would never be the same again. This was no longer just a story of survival. It was a story of connection, courage, and the ties that bind life across worlds. And the human, who had acted instinctively to protect another, now stood at the center of it all, facing a future he could not yet fully see, but one he would live in. No matter what it held, the human had grown stronger. Days of rest, care, and careful movement had slowly returned his body to near normal, though he still felt the occasional ache where the attack had hit him hardest. The palace halls no longer seemed intimidating. He knew the layout, now the soft lights, the quiet hum of machines, the strange glowing gardens outside the windows. Everything that had once felt alien was now familiar. Yet, despite the comfort, he knew his life was no longer his own. The Queen's decree remained clear. He was not a prisoner, but he could not leave. The bond he had formed by saving the princess was recognized as sacred. It tied him to the royal family in ways that could not be broken. He had acted instinctively, without thinking. Yet that act had created responsibility, expectation, and a place for him in a world he had never imagined. The princess came to him that morning with a small smile. She carried a tray of food and set it beside his bed. "You should eat," she said softly. "You have regained strength, but you still need care." He smiled faintly. "I know. Sometimes I feel like I have been away from my world too long."